Hello, friends. I'm Kush Khandelwal, and this is Ageless Athlete. A few years ago, I started asking questions that would not leave me alone. Why do some people keep pushing mentally, physically, spiritually long after others burn out or break down? What does it really mean to age well when you still crave movement, meaning, and mastery? This show is my search for answers. Each week, I talk to elite athletes, everyday adventurers, and pioneering researchers who are stretching the limits of what's possible across age, injury, illness, and self doubt. You will hear hard won lessons, untold stories, and science backed strategies for building a body and mindset that lasts. For those of us joining for the first time, welcome to the show. For the rest, thank you for joining us again. Time is our most valuable asset, and I deeply appreciate you giving me your time today.
Friends, welcome back to the Ageless Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Kush Khandelwal, reporting from San Luis Potosi in Mexico as I continue my journey. And today we are continuing the conversation with physiotherapist and coach Andy McVittie. In part one, we tackled big picture myths around aging with Andy. We talked about why decline isn't inevitable and how strength and movement can transform how we age. In this episode, we get more specific. We talk about the joints that tend to break down first: shoulders, elbows, fingers, and knees, and what we can actually do about it. Andy shares how he approaches pain patterns, where people usually go wrong, and why the solution isn't to stop moving in most cases, but to move differently. We also cover some unexpected ground, like whether sleep positions actually matter, how to manage the mental spiral that can come with injury, and what it means to be grateful for the body you have right now, even if it's not moving how it used to. This is a wide ranging but grounded conversation, filled with the kind of perspective that only comes from decades of helping real people move better, not just perform better. We didn't cover everything: hips, ankles, full return to play protocols. So expect Andy back again for another round. If you are enjoying this kind of thoughtful, honest exploration of aging well, my friends, make sure to subscribe to the Ageless Athlete newsletter. It's just a couple times a month, and it's more than just podcast recaps. I dive into the mindset, tools, and strategies that help everyday athletes and everyday people move through life with strength, curiosity, and a little more joy. You can subscribe to the newsletter by going to www.agelessathlete.co. Okay, let's get on with Andy McVittie. Andy, great to see you. Last time we tackled a lot of foundational topics. We talked about the myths of aging, the importance of strength, the trap of reducing activity too soon. We also zoomed in on knees for a little bit, and we talked about the most common complaints amongst aging athletes and how to manage knee pain and stay strong. Today, I'm hoping we can build on that and go deeper into key regions like shoulders, ankles, fingers, and feet.
Yeah.
We will also want to zoom out again to talk about overall conditioning,
Mhm.
how training needs to evolve as we age, and how to prevent common injuries before they start. Andy, welcome back.
Yeah, thank you.
How do you feel about the agenda for today?
Yeah, no, that sounds fantastic. I think it's good to have the opportunity to speak broadly, and a lot of the things that maybe we spoke about, knees. I mean, we just pick that because it's a very common complaint. Can be applied to the principles can be applied to any joint of the body, but it's nice to then go and get specific, and then, as you say, take a broader look. Again, it's that context that's needed.
Super. Well, okay, let's jump in with shoulders.
Hmm.
So, a lot of aging athletes lose overhead mobility without realizing it. I am my own favorite illustration here. I started losing mobility in my 20s, I think, when I realized I could no longer serve overhead in tennis. I used to
Ah,
be a keen tennis player,
yeah.
and I basically just stopped playing tennis and I moved on. And then, you know, uh, fasting forward 20 years,
Yeah.
and now I find that my mobility in my shoulders has gone down dramatically.
Okay.
And I think that people perhaps don't realize this happens because one doesn't always need overhead mobility for many things, unlike knees, where we see and use our knees all the time.
Yes.
So, what is your favorite way to maintain healthy shoulders and range of motion?
If we feel we've lost mobility because we've just not been going there, we've just not used to being there, then it's a balance of most things. So some stretching, encouraging stretching into that area. I think often when people are stretching, they go kind of too hard, yeah, really hard into it. Um, so some nice, consistent, static stretching can be useful, pain-free. Also, some work into the end range. So the type of thing maybe where you would lie on the floor with your arms overhead in a Y position, if you're able to do that. Keep the arms super straight and lifting the hands off the floor. So actually actively working against gravity, pulling and that's hard to do even with no weights or anything like that at all. But sometimes we can have the range in a shoulder, the actual functional ranges or the actual range is there within the joint itself, but we haven't got the control, we haven't got the strength to access that is often kind of the first thing to go. Um, if it's age related disuse type issue. So to actually work, do some stretching, then give the shoulder a signal to go into that range under its own steam instead of being helped to get there under its own effort. But one of the best that can be adjusted in various ways is to spend time in a hanging position. And I'm here talking obviously about particularly about climbers, um, but many overhead athletes. If you've got a pull-up bar that you can get feet on the floor and to spend some time in an active position, you can alter that to wherever your comfort level is. You could have feet on a chair, so your body is much more at much less of an angle, rather than being totally vertical, because that can be irritating and painful for shoulders sometimes. And just spending time, we sort of hinted at in the start there that we stop spending time in these ranges, and that's one of the reasons why we can lose range if we're just looking at the age related, process. Um, the other side of that really that we see with shoulders in particular of difficulty moving them, of pain moving them, that type of thing, is often tendon related. And that's we spoke last time about strength being super important, which it is. Keep your muscle mass, improve your muscle mass, keep and improve your muscular strength, all of that side of thing, power as well, all of this. But what's just as, if potentially not more important, and I'm going to say just as important, because if you say one's more important than the other, then people ignore the other one. We'll say both. Um, is the tendons themselves and how we treat those. And to hanging is a good example. We tend to hang for time, hang for 20, 30, 45 seconds, something like that. Very good for the joint. That's your kind of stretch, if you like, through into it, but also really good for tendons. And tendons are not a very responsive tissue. Um, a lot of the tendons that you can have in your 50s, 60s, and 70s, that collagen was laid down when you were a teenager. That's been with you potentially, if for 50 or 60 years. The tendon itself, therefore, has much more potential to degenerate, to degrade, than a muscle does. Muscles are constantly being renewed and replenished, and tendons aren't. And it's the fluid around the tendon. Many changes happen in the tendon we can touch on later if you want. But what I will say here is that, we need to spend some time on our tendons as we get older. And isometric work, so static, held positions with that tendon under some low to medium level of strain, doesn't have to be super hard work, is a really valuable thing to do. And that actually fits in quite nicely, with getting that range back too. So, my number one, what would I do, would be to find a way to load in an overhead position that, for time, that doesn't cause any negative symptoms, and build from there. Yeah.
Beautiful, Andy. One
Yeah.
thing that I suppose we should quickly cover, which is any simple movement tests or warning signs people should watch out for. Because, like I said, I did not keep a close eye on my own mobility degrading, and I'm finding out kind of late. So, are there some tests that people can?
So these things do creep up on us. You're quite right. We lose a percent here or there, and we sort of don't notice, and the body can adapt around it as well. We can gain extra, or work and bend through our thoracic spine or lumbar spine in order to compensate for overhead mobility loss. We may not even notice it happening. So a super important thing I feel to do is to benchmark, is to find what's normal for you. Various different ways that we can do this, but the good old wall angel or a floor angel, that kind of thing. You could video yourself doing a wall angel. For people that don't know, it's where you put your back flat against the wall, and you try to put your elbows and your hands against the wall as well, and straighten your arms overhead, pull them back down, or take a photo of yourself from the side, reaching overhead as high as you can. And reaching behind as well, as far as you can. So you've got something to reference it against. Now, this isn't something that you would then check every week to see what's going on. It's not worth spending your time with that. But every year, give it your New Year MOT, we would say in the UK, which is the annual sort of safety check that your car has, an MOT. It's a term that we use here as sort of like to check everything's okay, everything's running all right. You change your oil, you change, all the service it, that type of thing. So yeah, you give yourself a once over at the start of every year, be that start of training season, start of climbing season, whatever works for you, or the new year, just because that's a time when people often are thinking about these kind of things. And just look, and that can be, then you could look at your split, you could look at your, whatever movement that you think, and just take a photo. We've all got the digital, data to, storage now, and then compare each year.
I've been thinking a lot about energy, not just in training, but in recovery, in focus, in how we age. So when I came across NutriSense, it hit home. It's a program that pairs a 24 by 7 glucose biosensor with a dedicated dietitian to help you understand how your body responds to food, stress, sleep, and movement, and then act on the data. I chose it because I wanted something real, not another hack or one size fits all plan, just honest insight into what's actually going on inside me and how to build habits that last. NutriSense has helped over 150,000 people take that step. And if you want to try it, you can get 33% off your first month with code AGELESS15 at nutrisense.io. Again, that's nutrisense.io, code AGELESS15. You can also find this information on the show notes for this episode. I remember doing some wall
Mm,
angels with a physio a while back, and I think it didn't hit me on how poor my form was.
right.
So maybe we can spend a second here because I feel we are so
Mhm.
adaptable. We can compensate in all kinds of ways. So I know that when I was doing that wall angel drill, my left side, which is my bad shoulder side, my back would arch
Yes.
completely
Okay. So
to allow for my elbow and my wrist to. So can you just speak for a second about how to correctly do this particular drill to assess range of
okay.
motion?
Okay. Now, number one, I mean, you were noticing a difference there side to side. It sounds like between your left side, which you call your bad side. I would suggest it's not. This
Yeah,
is a
correct.
well-known thing in the physio world. It's not a bad shoulder, is it? Maybe it has some differences to your right one, but you're still climbing, you're still
Health.
active, you're still doing lots of stuff. So be kinder to your left shoulder. Um, yeah, there are ways that we can. One of my that I do might be difficult to explain potentially verbally, but we'll give it a go. Is to stand in a door frame, and if I'm going to measure, say, my left shoulder, I would stand in a door frame sideways with the door frame running down my spine. Yep, on one side. With my right hand and my right foot, I would brace against the other side of the door frame. Most people can reach and do that. And make sure that my back is flat all the way down. Yeah, that my left shoulder can move freely, though, is important. And make sure my head's in contact. Yeah, and if we want to be fussy, your left heel is also in contact with the bottom of the door frame. And this gives us as much as we can without building some thing that looks like a medieval torture device that will keep all bits still. Nothing else should be able to move too much there or change too much. And so you can take a photo from the side there, and that takes a lot of these other potential, um, way adaptations that the body will move out of the formula really. But going back to wall angels, I feel it's important to say everybody will be different in a wall angel. It's not bad if you're not able to get your elbows and your wrists in contact. It's not good if you can. um, you know, and anatomically, internally, certainly bony, what's known as morphology, the shape of our bones, we're all super different. Your socket will be a different size than mine. The size of the ball and shape of the ball will be different to mine. The acromion, which is a piece of bone that comes off it sits at the top of the shoulder. We know they have different characteristics and shapes. How differently shaped people's chests are. Some people are wide and broad. Some people are sort of barrel shaped and a sort of different shape. That affects how our shoulders move because of where it attaches to the sternum and then at the other end where it attaches onto the shoulder blade. So Some people will be able to. Some people will be able to do these side splits. Some people will never be able to do the side splits, no matter how hard they try. That doesn't mean we shouldn't try and improve what we've got, because we definitely should, and we can do that. But yeah, we're all different, so don't compare to other people. I suppose it would be a much shorter way of saying what I've just said there. Yeah, just because somebody else can do that doesn't mean that you either should or need to. But if you've started to feel that you've potentially got an issue there, then chances are you probably have. Speak to someone who knows, that can confirm whether this is something that needs attention or not, and then work it and see what you can do.
Fantastic for helping break that down. I know that nothing substitutes the specialized care that somebody's own doctor or physio can provide, and we can't cover everything when it comes to shoulder exercises. One key exercise I think that is indeed widely praised is just the dead
Mhm.
hanging on a pull-up bar. I think that has any other similar exercises or variations of the dead hang, because one variation that I have been prescribed is what they call scapular
Mhm. Yeah.
retractions on the pull-up bar. So again, this is very generalized information. We are not trying to treat a
No.
particular person, but yeah, any other uh, thoughts or any other supplements to shoulder
Yeah, if we want to keep it
health?
to, simple, so on a bar, yeah, so we cast it out here thinking about things like the gym or whatever, that kind of thing, and gym programs, this, that, and the other. You've got a bar at home hung up in your doorway. That's what you've got to work with. A lot of climbers are not keen on the gym. I think they should be, but they're not. They like calisthenics. They like the idea of hanging. Number one, I would say, make sure you're not doing everything in hanging. One of the best things about the new, pickups from the floor kind of program. I used to see people that would be training on a fingerboard overhead, doing bar-core overhead, doing pull-ups, climbing, and then wondering maybe why their arms are sore when they put them overhead. There's just an awful lot of overhead there. So all that aside, the usual caveats. Um, yeah, isometrics, single arm scapular shrugs. If you can't do any of these things I'm talking about, by the way, simply just put your feet on a chair or get some of these pull-up bands that there are now. These, that supposedly take like 60 kilos and that kind of thing. They're fantastic. So much better than the old like yellow resistance band that used to snap if you looked at it too hard. So there's bar walks. So where you literally go along a bar, yeah, hand over hand, yeah, turning hand each way each time you do. You can spin on the spot with two hands, so you're turning 180 degrees, swapping from hand to hand. So you've pretty much always got two hands on. There's just that sort of second there where you're controlling it as you go around. You can hang on one arm and see how far you can spin around one way, how far you can spin back the other way. Isometrics, two-handed isometrics, one-armed isometrics if you're able to. And my sort of overall is all this variety. This is just a bar. There's so many things you can do with it. But wide would be one of the things I think both with fingerboards. I don't know why it never caught on with fingerboards. The Anderson brothers did a great one that it was chopped in half. It was two pieces, so you could set it.
I remember
Yeah,
that.
yeah, you could set it
I
up to
remember that.
your
Yeah.
shoulder width.
Yeah.
A lot of elbow issues that I see are
Yeah.
often people, they've got a pull-up bar in their doorway, or they've got a fingerboard with jugs on, and that's what they're using. And it's quite a narrow range. And actually, we spend quite a lot of time in climbing out wide. So if you can get wide, get wide. Yeah, and all of that sort of suggestions I was just making there. Yeah, do those in a wider position as well if you can.
Friends, it means a lot that you're here. I pour a ton of heart into the show. The research, the interviews, the editing. It's all me, trying to share stories that matter. If Ageless Athlete has ever made you feel seen, inspired you, or just kept you company on a long drive, or better, over a run or a bike ride, I would be so grateful if you considered supporting it. Even a small amount helps keep it going, helps keep bringing the show to you for free. You can chip in at buymeacoffee.com slash agelessathlete. Again, buymeacoffee.com slash agelessathlete. You can find the link on the show notes as well. Thank you for listening and for being part of this. Super helpful. Yes, adding variety
Yeah.
to our hangs. And yeah, thank you for taking time to talk about shoulders, given it is so foundational for overhead athletes. Staying with the upper
Yep.
body, what are some other common areas that you see as let's say issues with aging? I am thinking, elbows, wrists, maybe pecs,
Yeah.
maybe neck. But I will let you drive it, and maybe you can speak about common issues and how can we deal.
I guess the most common, aside from what we've spoken about, will be elbows and fingers. So elbows, I'm meaning more when people get tendinopathies, either golfers, tennis, or the slightly lesser known, sort of understood, what's now kind of really becoming known as climber's elbow, which is a tendon for a different muscle, the brachialis. And funnily enough, one of the the best things I find for people that start to feel these problems, going back to what I said just a few minutes ago about the fact that tendons like long duration holds, yeah, whether the load's not too great, but we're doing 4, 5, 6 repetitions of 30 to 45 seconds, that kind of thing. So do some hangs in your warm up. Come back to hangs again. Absolutely fantastic for elbows. If you're able to hang wide with your palms facing away from you, do 30-second hang there, feet on the floor, really easy, nice and gentle, nice and gentle. Go on, sorry.
Quick question: what is the modern guidance on hanging elbows slightly bent or elbows completely straight and hanging on one's joints?
So as usual with all my answers, yeah, variety, a bit of both. It's not the end of the world to hang on our connective tissue. You know, the clues in the name in some ways. It's what connects one bit to the other. You know, I'd certainly, if I'm trying to relax, I've speaking to you. It's the late afternoon here in the UK. I've been out trad climbing this morning. I'm trying to convert myself into a crack climber after 30 years of face climbing. It didn't go well today, I have to say. But I got to a rest point and I was like, I need to rest. I was absolutely, yeah, at the end. And I sagged onto my connective tissue. There was very little activation going on there at all because I just needed to relax everything and get everything back that I possibly could. So again, variety, that's not the end of the world. If you do that all the time, if you start adding weight to yourself, weighted pull-ups, weighted hangs, doing that, I would suggest no, that's not the great idea. But to get your body able to be robust and tolerant enough of periods of time hanging on its own connective tissue, then, I was in a nice, at that point, kind of hand jam. Yeah, and so I just sort of dangled off it. Didn't help. Sadly. So yes, all the positions, and this is what I was going to say with this, the idea of we do these hangs, wide hand or wide hands, palm facing away, then as wide as you can with palm facing towards you, so the kind of the chin up position, but wide, and then work your way in. over 3 or 4 hand positions until you're kind of shoulder width apart, and it covers all of the angles that your tendons can be stressed under, and it applies a nice load to them. Essentially, cut a long story short, prepares them for what's to come, makes them more accepting of what is to come. It's a process known as stress relaxation, and they hopefully become less symptomatic. I have more success with elbow tendon issues rather than the good scientific based exercises that we do as well. But I found that they're really not very effective unless we put this sustained, very light stretches, if you like, under load into the tendons, not stretches, but load under tension prior to exercise, and things like sorting out bent arm sleeping. Yeah, it is one of the absolute big wins for particularly for golfers' elbow for me.
Can you say that again? Bent arm sleeping. What is
Well,
that?
you know, some people will lie flat on their back while they sleep and sort of not move. Some like to sleep on their left, some like to sleep on their right. No matter what you may see on social media, that kind of thing, it really matter. Sleep how's comfortable for you. That's okay. You're not setting yourself up for anything terrible. But if you sleep with your elbows bent, you know, maybe your hand tucked under the pillow or under your body and you're on it. Now, obviously, we're not tensing our muscles in that position, but you are applying load through the tension, through the tendon. You are compressing it against the bones that it's attached to, and you're also literally compressing it because you're bending your elbow. And when you bend your elbow, things get squashed. That's fine. Things are meant to get squashed, but if you've a sensitized tendon, then that will upset it, and you'll wake up in the morning I'd say like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, where people, their hand and their elbows are bent, and they really have to go slowly to unbend it because it feels so painful.
I call it getting rigor mortis in the morning.
That. And so my number one tip for this, because we also, you know, I was talking about we need to get these basics in rather than the super swish scientific, what's the latest cool exercise. Sleep is really important, you know, for healing, for everything. We know that. And so if you say to somebody, okay, sleep with straight arms, that's going to help, but they only get 1 hour's sleep because they've spent all night monitoring whether or not they're sleeping with straight arms, that's going to have a negative effect. So what I like is climbing tape down the back of the elbow. If you straighten your arm and apply climbing tape down the back of it, just across the elbow on both sides, when you start to bend your elbow, when you're asleep or half asleep, that kind of thing, you just detect the tension, and it's often just enough to make you think, oh no, maybe I shouldn't be doing that. And it might make the difference only between being fully bent, and being halfway bent, but that can often be enough to tip an elbow tendon from being very unhappy in the morning to feeling okay in the morning. And they are touchy, grumpy things. We need to be nice to them.
Andy, thanks for cutting through the noise. A few years ago, I was advised to stop sleeping on my side. I know I sleep on my side, and many listeners do as well. I'm sure that I was told to start sleeping on my back, and I tried that, and it was very uncomfortable because 40 plus years of one style of sleeping, and then to have to, if anything, it irritated my body more than anything. So anyway, I sleep on my side now, but it's good to know that inherently none of these positions are terrible. It's specifically what we do with our arms and how we position our arms.
If it's to do with that, now there may be
sleeping.
some, again, the usual caveat, there may be some specific reason why for a short period of time it would be a really good idea if you can, not do X, Y, Z. And you can support yourself with pillows, so maybe, for example, you might not want to sleep on your back for a reason. Well, if you get like a big pillow, a bolster pillow, or even just a normal pillow, and put that behind your back, so it will actually sort of stop you rolling onto your back, that kind of thing. I've talked with patients so much about sleeping positions, this type of thing. It's one of my basics. We need to get the basics in order to have a successful rehab. And people can control maybe how much protein they're having, making sure they're getting enough energy through their food and this. These are all things we can control. Sleep's really difficult, and it's quite an emotional subject. And some people, really, really struggle and believe they're doing all the right things that they're being told to, and still not sleeping well. And then they really stress about it, and then that makes the whole sleeping situation worse. And so I normally say to people, do what you can, but don't build your entire life around trying to ensure that you get what people would say was, is a good night's sleep. It's something that we're often not too in control of.
Hello, friends. Just a quick break. This is not an ad. If you have been enjoying these conversations, I would love for you to subscribe to my newsletter. It is where I go deeper, sharing stories, reflections, and behind the scenes insights that don't always make it into the podcast. I write about what I'm learning from elite athletes and how to stay ageless in body and mind. If you have ever wanted a thoughtful, inspiring read that ties it all together: training, aging, mindset, and awe. You will love this. You can find the link in the show notes or just head to agelessathlete.co. Again, www.agelessathlete.co, that is, to sign up. And yeah, just a couple of emails a month, and you can unsubscribe anytime. Absolutely no spam ever. Okay, back to the show.
Andy, again, before we move on from this, so we touched
Yeah.
on elbows. Any other areas to think about when it comes to elbows? Because they tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, those tend to be huge problem areas for athletes. And then while we are on the subject, maybe you can also touch upon any other upper body issues that are also common.
Yeah, but we'll talk about fingers, I think. But yes, golfer's elbow, tennis elbow, just to sort of discuss. My record for golfer's elbow, for a patient presenting with golfer's elbow, is 27 years that they'd had golfer's elbow for.
Whoa.
Obviously at a level that wasn't, impacting them
Wow.
painfully daily, but it had just been grumbling, and every time they got to a certain level of activity, it would rear up, it would stop them, and they'd back down. Weren't hugely motivated. We don't all have to be. They didn't want to be climbing, 9A or whatever, this kind of thing. They were happy with what they were doing, but they'd notice whenever they tried, this happened, blah, blah, blah. And those hangs, this nice, easy, and bedtime sleeping was the biggest turnover, along with load management for them as well. Now, my issue with somebody that has it for that long, as we touched on before, about tendons and tendon health as we age, it's more difficult because it's not a very responsive tissue. There are differences that change really in what's known as the extracellular matrix, the fluid and supportive structure around the tendon rather than the tendon itself. That changes in all sorts of different ways. And it's that. And then if we've got, an injured tendon or a tendon that's not operating happily for that amount of time, that potentially sets that person up for more problems as they age, I think. So it's important with tendinopathies, they can grumble along, but we need to get them seen to. I have tennis elbow. My approach to that is different than golfers. Golfer's elbow tends to be quite uncomfortable. It's not a nice feeling. It's not the tennis elbow can feel like somebody's stabbing you in the back of the arm. It's a very, very different beast. Causes a lot of worry. It will be discomfort, pain to the point where you have to stop what you're doing. Whereas golfers, a lot of people can grit their teeth and bear through it. They probably shouldn't, but they do. But strangely, the common extensor tendon, which is what causes it, I've been, if you like, fortunate enough to see inside the human body. It's tiny. It's It's this tiny, tiny little thing that gives us so much. The amount of pain and discomfort we get from it is disproportionate. Um, that's an important message. It's also an important message because it's very common. It affects a lot of people at work, and therefore it's been studied a lot to see if we can, figure out what's going on. If it gets embedded and it's there, the average it seems to last for is 9 months, and then it goes. There does seem to be strong evidence that suggests it will go quicker with treatment, or at least people feel more able to be in control of it, to learn what upsets it and what doesn't, and to work with it in some ways, which can almost be as important. So, for example, in my book, I did put in a golfer's elbow, didn't put in tennis elbow. Very individual. It's very finicky. It's a tricky beast to deal with. But the overall message is quite not positive, because not everybody wants to hear that they might be stuck with this for 9 months, but it will end. Whereas, as we touched on before, golfers it can just go and go and go forever if you don't treat it. Whereas, yeah, tennis elbow, it will go. It's like if you've ever known anybody with the frozen shoulder and that type of thing. A deeply unpleasant condition can take years to work through the phases, although that in itself is becoming a bit, people are not sure about that anymore. Not about whether it will end, but what these phases are and where they are and what they mean. But yet it will end at some point. That's the message. So yeah, that tendons, these hangs, build them into your strength work, build them into your warm up. This isometric work as you age is just as important as going to the gym and working a muscle and tendon through range. Yeah. So if you like doing pull-ups, if you do pull-ups 3 times a week, make one of those sessions maybe a lock-off session, a hang session. Yeah, rather than just pull-ups all the time. Keep those tendons as healthy as you're keeping your muscles. And yeah, fingers them. The other biggie. We do know climbers, and what we do with our fingers is asking a lot of them. Can they adapt? Yes. Do we often ask too much of them too soon before they've had time to adapt? Yes. But if we compare to things like long distance running, we know that if you're a long distance runner who has progressed appropriately, you will have more cartilage in your knee than somebody who isn't active. So the joints, the cartilage and such, like the connective tissue, the tendons, the ligaments, they all become more robust and stronger. There seems to be about a 7-year time span that if you've been consistently and regularly climbing, and climbing so that we're challenging ourselves and our hands and our fingers, then a lot of injuries tail off at that point. Your classic pulley ruptures and such like, and that type of thing, because the tissues and the hand itself has just got robust enough now to deal with what you're doing to it. It's happier dealing with that. And it takes 7 years, it would appear, to get to that kind of level, which is interesting in itself, isn't it? It's a long time of tissue adaptation. But then as we age, as I've touched on before, aging is a process, although this is all about aging with optimism and staying, what we are doing is staying ahead of the curve. Aging does happen. Joint spaces do naturally narrow. Our ability to recover does naturally reduce, not drop off a cliff, that type of thing, but it does. And so we need to respond to what our fingers are maybe telling us. And if you're waking up the day after climbing and your fingers are stiff, they feel swollen, the classic, can you touch in what's called a hook grip? Yeah. Can you bend your fingers down to touch the top of the palm of the hand? And if you can normally do that, but now you can't, yeah, your fingers need some rest. Get that range back, because that's swelling inside the joint. That's a response to the joint being overloaded. We seem to have enough evidence now as well to suggest that crimping compressive forces into the joint and that kind of thing can um, speed up processes such as arthritis, that type of thing, if it's done in a way that is overloading the finger or the fingers. It's not necessarily, this is your destiny. If you climb, you will get horribly painful fingers as you age. But there does seem to be a correlation between that. Now, I see people maybe who have manual jobs and they love climbing, and it's a lot to ask about hands. They struggle a lot. Often tree surgeons, height access workers, people like that. So as we age, what I'm doing is reinventing myself as a steep sport climber, getting on the twofers and that type of thing, away from my happy place of face climbing on the crimps, and also in trad as a crack climber. Um, Does it mean I'm staying away from face climbing because I think it's going to cause me terrible problems as I get older? No, and I'm still going to do that. Am I going to do a bit less of it and introduce some more variety into my climbing? Yes. And what happens if I'm getting more into the twofer style of climbing? I've got to get strong and robust all over. Same with crack climbing. Both of these things to me are like wrestling a bear. They're just such hard work. That crack today, when I was saying I had to hang and just like, whoa, recover. It wasn't particularly because my forearm was tired. It's my whole body that was tired and needed to recover. So it encourages you to get all round robust and strong, which is what we need to do. Get down the gym, that kind of thing. So yeah, if we continue to just do the same as we've always done, that will be different. And I can't remember if I said this in the first episode or not, but it always bears repeating that if you've got to the stage of life where you've hopefully got some more time and you've maybe even retired, that you don't have to stick to the 7-day week. If you usually climbed 3 times in a week and did a couple of training sessions, but you're now feeling, oh, my fingers are sore, my knees sore, this, whatever it might be. Try taking that to 9 days. Yeah. And just add in an extra, or, whatever kind of works for you. You will not drop off a cliff. You will have better quality training sessions. You will recover fully and get all the gains between, if your body is telling you it's struggling, that means you're not getting your gains. Yeah, if you're still training or you're not maintaining. And if you can adapt things, I think the whole 7-day calendar, etc., I think is from like the Mayans 5,000 years ago, who figured out the lunar cycle in 31 days or 28 days, all this kind of stuff. That's absolutely of no relevance to your body. Yeah, it doesn't. The most common issue I see actually in people's training plans and where have I gone wrong is that they believe when they turn a page in their training diary, it's somehow all disappeared. That last 7 days has just gone. So you'll get somebody who like the climbing on Saturday and Sunday, their training diary finishes on a Sunday. So they turn over the page, what we're going to do on Monday. Oh, it's a whole new week. I'm going to train or whatever. Well, maybe that should be a rest day, because actually, if you look back to last week, you've just, done quite a lot in the back end of the week. So you're freer to pick and choose and experiment and allow more recovery, because recovery is where the gains happen. So,
Quick thing I want to ask you about
yes.
fingers. So for sure, myself, many like me who have been on the rocks for 2 decades or more, or maybe less, we find that unfortunately we have ended up with what I like to call like Frankenstein
Yeah.
fingers,
Yeah.
swollen knuckles, and also, yes, the ability to make an even closed tight
Mhm.
fist. So what I have found in my case is that over the years with doing some rehab work with my fingers, I have less pain episodes in my knuckles. I used to have painful knuckles and inability to straighten my fingers
Yeah.
completely sometimes. But I have now, I think, reached a point of stasis where I don't have pain. I can climb regularly. I am not always brutalizing my
Yeah.
fingers on very
Yeah.
hard things. But yeah, so I don't have pain, but I also have lost that full range of
Mm.
motion. So my question to you is, are there any long-term implications of people who have synovitis, swollen fingers, whatnot? Is there a possibility that now it seems stable, but say 20 years, 30 years down the line, they could just become a lot worse?
Yeah, I was with you all the way there until you said it could become a lot worse. Um, could issues that we see normally as we age be affected by having had, say, synovitis for a long time in a finger? And that doesn't just mean that the finger's got a big knuckle. Yeah, I'm talking about that pain, that yeah, that real feeling of stiffness and such like in there that we get with it. Because the synovitis, if it's true synovitis, the capsule of the joint increases in size, and that really doesn't go away after we've got rid of the itis. Synovitis is the inflammation, and it's that inflammatory process that is inside the joint, getting when it gets irritated, when it gets overloaded, when we don't allow enough recovery, that can definitely affect the cartilage long term, and is seen as a precursor towards arthritis, which is an entirely natural part of aging, between that happening faster than it should, essentially, or progressing quicker than it should. So we get age inappropriate signs. Now, wherever you are with your fingers, again, going back to like we were saying with the shoulders and such like before, not everybody can get fingers down. Find your benchmark. Where are you at? Yeah, and monitor from there. But it's important to do. I was speaking to a 25-year-old the other day who had ended up showing their hands to a rheumatologist. This person is a setter, a root setter, um, super strong climber, and they'd said, "Oh gosh, you've got the hands of a 60-year-old," and so he has the nodules on his end knuckles that we often see. Big knuckles, can't fully straighten his finger. I mean, there's work he needs to do, definitely, and it's an ongoing discussion around that. But just because you've ended up with big knuckles, yeah, this can be bony adaptation. It can be a response that as I was talking before about the connective tissue building up over like 7 years of making itself bigger and stronger. We know if you scan the bone density of a tennis player, their their dominant arm that they use, yeah, will have a much greater bone density than the left. There's similar being done in fencers who really their lead leg that they slam down on the floor, and their powerful leg has a greater bone density than the leg that's trailing. Yeah, it's not necessarily arthritis. Might look like it, but it's bony overgrowth in order to reinforce the finger and strengthen the finger. But if this is, that was that root setter in that situation, be as kind to your fingers as you can be. These are our tools that we want to use, and we want to. You wouldn't if you were a really keen cyclist and had got a super swish time trial bike. Yeah, those people they wash that bike, they wax it, they oil it after every ride. They will not go out on it in the rain. Yeah, they've got this amazing thing, and with us and yeah, for our fingers, we should treat them the same. Yeah, we should be super, super kind to them. We want them to perform, don't we? We want them to do their stuff. And if we're hammering them, they're not going to do that. So yeah, the ongoing discomfort in a finger, that doesn't settle after a couple of days. If you've had a super hard session, red pointing something or achieving some goal or whatever, that kind of thing. Yeah, okay, we can have a little bit of soreness and deal with that. It should settle reasonably quickly though. And it's if it doesn't and we get these chronic issues that go on, that's when we really need to, get help, basically.
Andy, I can't help but just love what you just said about being kind and
Yeah.
loving to our fingers. And I think that honestly applies to the rest of our body as
Yeah.
well. I had a friend who had this, a surfer friend who had this specific body gratitude
Mhm.
practice. He would wake up every day and he would, say thanks, and he would literally talk to each of his, let's say, his
Yeah.
important
Yeah.
limbs, his body, his arms, shoulders, legs, hips, and he would talk to them individually on how much he loved them, how much gratitude he felt for them, for the incredible allowances they
Mm.
provided him in being able to surf well and just live well. So, yes, we need to be kind to our body. We need to not just go out and run hard or climb hard or surf hard and just forget about those things. We need to actually come back and realize that these are our
Yeah.
tools, and we need to keep those tools rested and polished. Okay, I'm going off here. Coming back. So, before we move on, any last tactical points you want to make about the upper body before we move down to the
Just
lower body?
to and definitely as we are said aging with optimism. We are looking here at fighting back, staying ahead of the curve, beating this thing for as long as we can, all of that good stuff. But aging, as we come back to, is inevitable. If you're going to bring in something new, yeah, do that slowly and carefully, even more so than when you were younger. And that can be something new, can just be walking into the crag now that the weather's got better, rather than going to the climbing wall, and you haven't put a pack on your back and done an hour's walking and that kind of thing for a long time. It's going to be any part of the body really, but I'm using that as an example. And you always used to be able to do that when you were younger. Fine, that's great. Yeah, but maybe now we need to go and have a practice walk. Yeah, just go and see how we're feeling, see how things are going, that kind of thing. You will be able to do it. You will be likely be able to get back there, and it'll all be fine. But don't just shock your body by suddenly putting 15 kilos of trad equipment on your back or whatever. Well, maybe not that heavy, but yeah, putting a trad pack on and going hiking up a mountain when you haven't done that for 6 months. So just bring things in slowly. The- We the body doesn't need much to warn it and prepare it of what's to come. Yeah, so I'm not saying you need to plan a 3-month fitness, whatever, this kind of thing around it, but just get out for a couple of hikes, yeah, before you go and do it and then hike and climb.
Yeah. Again, such an astute observation. And I think that it would behoove a lot of us to not let our ego drive our
Mm.
decisions. So, yes, maybe in our 20s and 30s, we could just go out for an impromptu 10-mile
Yeah,
run and
and that was
be
okay.
be kind of
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
with it. But now, if one knows that one is about to start a new kind of activity, maybe be more patient than even what might think is
yeah,
warranted, and err on the side of
yeah.
preparation
Yes, yeah.
to not have
That's a nice, yeah, it's a nice way of
regrets.
putting it. Yeah, yeah. Just give it a little notice.
Because I think, Andy, what happens is, and I think I can speak for many, is that exactly this will happen, which is one comes from a period of hibernation, and then we'll go out on like some sort of intense activity, right? Intense
Mhm.
run, climbing session, and then suddenly the body is not going to cope with it. And then instead of learning that crucial error about preparation, we will find dejection
Yeah.
and tell ourselves that I'm
I
old and
can't
I
do that
can't do
anymore.
this.
Yeah.
And then we will maybe not go and do that again for a while until short-term memory, and we'll go back and like you know uh pound our head against the wall again. But I think the lesson, really what you're pointing out, is so important, which is prepare well, and the body will
Yeah.
handle it, but just allow more grace
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
that.
More grace is this is lovely, isn't it? Yeah. Love your fingers. Give your body some grace. Yeah. 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 Fantastic.
Okay. Okay, good. Awesome. Awesome. Let's
Mm,
move on a little bit. Again, we are sticking with different important parts
okay.
of our body. So let's go down, Andy, perhaps to our lower body, right? So maybe we can start top down and cover what areas are more important that athletes come to you for. It could be hips, glutes, knees, ankles. We can start wherever you want.
Um. So if I'm trying to think of sort of like a theme. So I do get a lot of knee pain, which is where we were going with the knee pain, and things like uh simple interventions into the knees can be really good. And this is if we're looking at somebody's got the knee tendinopathy pain, that coming down, walking downhill or jumping off the boulder wall, and you get that really sharp, painful nip in the knee as it passes through a certain range and that kind of thing. And again, super simple wall squats, that type of thing. Holding, working really hard but pain free. Just change the position of your foot. Yeah, so it was what we call the shin angle. So if you imagine you're in a wall squat with your back against the wall, your thighs parallel with the floor, and then your shin vertical. So that's a vertical shin angle. If you have your feet a little in front, that will actually take some load off the knee. So if you find it painful in a wall sit, then do that. Just take your feet out to the front a bit, to the part where it isn't painful. Spend some time there, pain free. Get jelly legs. Yeah, really, really work those legs hard. Yeah, so hold it, working almost to failure, that type of thing. Can be super simple and can really, really help with that for a couple of reasons. One is it can really help the recruitment and coordination of all the muscles that insert into the knee. That type of exercise, the wall squat, where you're holding and sitting there in a position for ages until it works its way through the whole team. Yeah, and the weak link will be found. Yeah, and made to work and made to get stronger. It also has an effect on tendons. Come back to tendons again. It's that long period of holding, yeah, that tendons respond to well. But but what behind that, and what I see often is hip issues, single leg stand issues. And the knee is a little bit like this is what I was just thinking of. What's the theme? Yes, I see a lot of sore knees, but actually we often end up coming back to the hip. And I'm a big believer that there's no point in just working the knee if you're not going to work the rest of the system. Uh, and that even comes through onto the other side. We should be able to stand on one leg and have balance and control, yes, but we should also have balance in our pelvis. It should stay level. If you think of a runner, as they run, those two bony bits that you have on the front of your hips, that they should stay level, give or take. Obviously, not perfect, yeah, but we shouldn't see big changes happening there. And I often see, I work with, obviously here talking about climbing or what have you, but I work with athletes from all sorts of sports, and see problems with single leg stand around the hip and the hip control and things like the glute medius muscle on the side, or even accessing proper glute max. And I don't mean sleepy glutes. I don't mean glutes that have turned off and this kind of thing, but it's people's movement patterns that they have gone to, and they may be, for whatever reason, loading the knee more than they should. So you look at them in squats, you look at them in jumps, you look at them in hinge actions and see how they're moving. And you will see people really favoring the knee and staying off the hip, or sometimes the other way. They're trying to do everything through the hip and not getting onto the knee. So it's important to look through like the whole system. And I often find, I found like high level runners, and you ask them to do some single leg control work all over the place. Yeah, wobbling about, finding it really, really hard work. And the knee is a little bit, it's in the middle, isn't it? And if somebody has an issue at the hip, that can often show at the knee. And if also likewise with that contact with the floor through the foot and the ankle, if we've got a problem down there, that too can also show at the knee. So a lot of knee issues are actually, it's to do with the whole team rather than just one specific thing. So, great if you get some help with a knee issue. If it's all about the knee and it's all isolating the knee and the rest of the team's not getting hit, then, you might want to look broader than that. And it can be as simple as in the wall squat, pick your heels off the floor while you're doing it to work the calves. Yeah, can really get the calves shaking. That's quite a really hard exercise. It doesn't need to be hugely different. If you take 1 foot off the floor in a wall squat, you will be challenging the hip a lot more because it's now having to maintain stability through there. I do have an exercise that's probably like one of my favorites for the ankle, calf, knee, hip complex, if you like, system. It'd be quite hard to even start describing it verbally, but I may send it over to you. I have it videoed because it's one that I prescribe to patients and such like. Maybe your quotes.
Or feel free to be more animated because we will put this on YouTube
Okay.
most likely, and then later we can also supplement and add any other information to the show notes.
Right. Okay. So I wouldn't be mic'd up though would be the issue. I'm going to try and describe it, but essentially we're going to work in a position that I call the active stance, active knee. Well, I don't just call it that. That's what it's known as. And I say to somebody, imagine you're going to stop somebody coming past you. Yeah, you've got your friend's going to try and run around you. Yeah, and you go to that position, don't you, where your knees are a little bit bent, the weight's in the front of your foot, you're ready to react. Yeah, you're kind of like good to go. And it's that sort of position, but on one leg. Yeah, we take the other leg behind us, can be just resting on its toes. You may even want to lift it off the floor. It's fine to use a wall for balance or have a chair there for balance, that type of thing. But we really take the whole of the body over the front of the foot. When I ask people sometimes, and this is another sort of little test I will do, I'll say, okay, bring your weight forwards over the foot. How do they do that? Some people kind of bend backwards, yeah, and try and drive their hips forwards, and they don't actually take any of their body weight forwards. Other people go the other way and they stick their butt out backwards and they bend forwards, yeah. Whereas what we actually want is if you looked at yourself from the side, your ankle, your knee, yeah, your chest and your head are all over the front foot. Yeah, so everything's over the front foot. If we get to that point, the heel should just lift a little as well, which is what we want. So we're on that forefoot and we're working the calf, balance, control, that kind of thing. Then in that position, place your other hand that's not on a chair or what have you, on the front of your chest to detect if you're bending forwards or not. And then sink down as if somebody is pressing you on the top of your head and squashing yourself down. So we're going to bend now at the knee. Yeah, we've gone into that really active position. All our weight is over that foot. And then you bend at the knee. And there is nowhere, no compensations, no adaptations. There's nowhere to hide. Yeah, it just hits that whole leg, that whole complex. So there's hip stability going on there. But that particular, when you then sink down in the straight up position, will just absolutely hammer the quads and the and the knee. Yeah, and we go through phases, I think, as physios, as you learn more, realize what you don't know, try to learn everything, realize that you can't learn everything. We pick and take. Sometimes physios can become all about one thing. They find a system that they think is the answer to everything. You spend a while there and then realize that no one system can be the answer to everything, and you sort of pick and choose from different things. And where I'm at the moment in my development as a physio, which is changing all the time, is this more global kind of point of view, because the body is global. It's a complex mesh of numerous already complex systems that are all interacting with each other all the time. And a sore knee can sometimes just be about a sore knee, but we want to be looking elsewhere. And it works both ways. If you are strengthening the ankle and calf and the hip, that's offloading the knee because they're able to take more and do more. And so that can help the symptoms and help things settle. But we're also strengthening the knee as well, which makes it more able to do more. And so it's kind of, a double approach, really.
Amazing, Andy. Absolutely. You have so much wisdom to share that people can tap into directly. It is great to actually find somebody like you for this podcast who can go deep into these topics. Andy, thanks again for this chat today, and we'll meet again. That's it, folks. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Ageless Athlete Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this show just as much as I enjoyed creating and producing it. Whether you are an athlete looking to push your limits or someone striving to maintain a healthy, active lifestyle as you age, there is always something new to learn. From Ageless Athlete, we bring you a fresh episode each and every week. If you liked what you heard, we would love it if you would take a moment to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an update. And if you really liked what you heard, please leave us a review, crush those 5 stars on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever else you listen to your podcasts. It helps us reach more people who are passionate about staying strong and resilient, no matter their age. Don't forget to visit our website and leave your email so I can send you occasional insights, stories, and tips to keep you inspired and motivated on your journey. You can also follow us on Instagram at Ageless Athlete Podcast and on YouTube at Ageless Athlete Podcast as well for even more great content. All of these links are available on the show notes for this episode. This show is entirely produced by me, Kush Khandelwal, based out of California with the help of my trusted adventure pup Roger. Until next time, keep challenging yourself. Keep pushing those limits. Stay mentally and physically fit. Continue doing what you love to do. And my friends, stay ageless. Friends, this is not an ad. This is just a quick message to those amongst us who are listening to Ageless Athlete podcast for the first time. I would love it if you would hit subscribe and follow on your favorite podcast app, whether it's Apple Podcast or Spotify or Stitcher or Overcast or what have you. We bring you stories and routines and other inspiration from elites in the world of the best outdoor sports. In each episode, you will find how these athletes stay connected to the outdoors, maintain peak performance, and continue to thrive as they age. I encourage you to look through prior episodes and listen to a couple and see if they resonate. And then, come back next week. We release an episode each week. And I am really inspired to bring you some of the best stories from the world of the outdoors. Okay, back to the show.